Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epi of League Unlocked. Eric and Mark here with you guys for another and the should be final player ranking ahead of the 2026 season. It's Europe's turn. The LEC versus expanded to 12 teams, but we're still condensing the player rankings to 10 because it's just cleaner that way.
And we've heard you. We've heard the fan demands, the outcries saying, you know what, the LEC, it's just around the corner and no content being released. There's no drops on the official page or even, again, outside sources type of thing. So, again, very much so time to dive into the LEC, get you prepped for 2026.
And especially because there are actually some banger team announcement videos. They just came from the teams themselves, and the LEC had no affiliation with them. Before we dive into roll by roll, got to look at the nationality spread throughout. We had 16 Korean players in the LCS, only 10 in the LEC, and that's with 4 more teams. So shout out to them. But the real star is 3, count them, 3 North American players hanging out in the LEC. Busio, Jojo, and then Yukino coming on Carmine Corp Blue. And finally, I believe the most popular European country, we got 8 French players heading into 2026.
Oh, look at that. Maybe a little bit Carmine Corp type of influence into the LEC even further with the French nationality coming through. I think, again, not exactly a huge surprise about the Korean import difference between the LCS and the LEC. That always has been kind of a more LCS sort of thing, whether it's importing in general or whatever. But absolutely, no question, the feeling, the effect of the 3 North American imports that are going to be in the LEC are going to be things that we are going to be talking about when you look through every single position here.
There ain't no NA imports to talk about on that top side of the map where we begin this journey. We got a mix of new players and some veterans, and I think no question after what we saw throughout, despite one bad series against Oscar Rinnan, no question Kana is the top laner to beat and deal with in the league.
And that is such a strange exception to have to make because it's the complete unexpected one because of how strong, how consistent kind of look throughout that year. And I think that, again, heading into this 2026 year with that, direction, with that focus and readjusted goals for this Carmine Corp now that they've established themselves in the LEC, this is absolutely the top guy in the top spot in the top lane. How many times can you say top in that type of sentence for something like that? But Kana delivers as that number 1 option on this list.
And consistency is the key because we've seen highs from Broken Blade against even Eastern players, and we've seen Mirwin be a standout, not just top laner, but player in the league, but they've also been invisible or, maybe a weak point of that squad. So consistency goes to Kana. Nako's a guy who still, I think, is going to really start getting even more respect this year. He was starting to get it last year on Vitality, but standout player in that right. And then you get to kind of the new wave meets one little veteran guy in there. Rooster, Mainter, Emperos, all these guys are pretty hyped up young guys, either rookies or young in their careers coming in. And of course, Wonder is a big question mark. Didn't play for a year. We know this guy has been the best top laner in Europe, but it ain't 2019 anymore.
Well, when you're talking about that grouping, really, Rooster and Minter, you're looking at them and you're going off of kind of this expectation of these are the young guys that have come up through the scene, and especially come up through the scene in the last couple of years where there has been an emphasis, a demand, a hunger for domestic talent in Europe in that top lane that can contend with the Kanas, with those top options from the LCK. So absolutely excited to see them get their opportunity and what they can carve out. And then there is the old guard that has once again returned in Wonder to this top lane of the LEC on the big stage again. And yes, there are going to be questions about his performance, but I think what we saw last year in the small sprinklings of it, I think that he still has enough to offer where he can be one of these contending options in the LEC. Going to be cautious where we're expecting him to land out here in this early preseason power rankings.
And right behind Wonder, this is going to be a theme on this list. I know, Los Bretones. They got a lot of fans, and rightfully so. It's great content, great personalities. Baus, best Scion in the league, no question. I'll give him number 1 in that. But the LEC is going to be a different beast than the ERLs that we've seen the boys in Cadro completely dominate. So no, we're not immediately slotting in all these guys into top 3 of all their respective roles.
No, and I think this is going to be, again, similar to other things that we have talked about with various other regions and positionings within the power rankings. It's a prove me type of question at this point. You need to prove that you can succeed, that you can leapfrog the guys that are ahead of you in a power ranking situation like this when you are in the environment that is playing on that main stage at that highest level of competition within the region. I think it's going to be different. I do expect individually, when you're looking at someone like Baus, you mentioned the Scion pick, of course, that will be a factor. I think that, yes, someone's going to let that through, and he's going to absolutely show why that should never be an option against him, no matter what else is out there on Summoner's Rift. But I think there will be some ups and downs. That's because, again, success. What do you envision when you see success? Everyone thinks it's just that straight upward line. It ain't like that. It's a squiggly line. It's going upwards. It's backwards. It's downside. It's upside, diagonal. It's going every single direction. I think that's really what we're going to see with Los Ratones, and the Baus is a perfect example to talk about that to start off with the power rankings.
When you look on the jungle side of things, it's one of the more compelling ones because it's, number one, I think the most consensus top 3 of maybe all the roles, but the order of what that top 3 is highly debatable, and we're talking Skewmon, Elyoya, and Yike. And honestly, I don't think Elyoya could be 1. Maybe you're arguing Skewmon and Yike, depending on flipping around. But really, it's these central 3 of the top 3, and the order is up for grabs.
I'll take them in any combination you want them. You list them off, number 1A, 1B, 1, 2, 3, however you want to list them out. I'll take those 3 as the top junglers for the LEC. We've seen it for all of these squads. I think certainly you can give them all those another task, right, heading into this year on where you want to see the improvements, the strides that are going to be made for all of these guys. I think Elyoya, you want to see, again, continuing to evolve that leadership and that connection and synergy that he has with his teammates. You're looking at Skewmon, and again, a similar type of thing with G2 and becoming a larger part of that picture, being more involved within that communication. And for Yike, it's just, again, continuing to evolve with Carmine Corp as they continue to evolve as one of the top contending options within the LEC. So very happy to have all 3 of them represented at the top of the jungler rankings.
Yeah, and obviously Elyoya, the bigger vet out of these two. Skewmon still very green in his career, and Yike stepping into that leadership role. And then you've got kind of the journeyman guys. That seems offensive to call Razor journeyman. You know, he's been at times the best jungler in EU, but you know, the consistencies haven't been there. But the young guys coming in to the jungle spot, I'm always the most excited for. I mean, you look at Rylak at the bottom, who's been, again, a hyped up BRL guy getting an opportunity on a potential dark horse Na'Vi squad. And then Yakino, and of all the Los Ratones players, Velia, maybe this is the most LEC tryout type of tournament for him than anyone else on that roster.
Very much so. And again, this is one of those ones, one of the hypotheticals that was talked about so much last year during the run of Los Ratones, was so much about, look at this young player, the potential that he has. And again, so many of the things about it where it's going to be the reaction of LEC teams, that next level up, wanting them. You've got it even that next step further if you're any of those organizations, because you're going to get an even better sampling of what Velia can do on the LEC stage against all this top-level competition and preparation. You're going to get that, and that's, I think, extremely exciting if you're looking at the jungle position in the LEC.
And I think you're going to see his development and growth really skyrocket, because there was still a lot of teachings that he needed on Los Ratones. There were games where he was where he shouldn't be, getting caught out, not in the lane that he was supposed to be, but no question this guy's mechanics are at the level to be playing not just in Tier 1, but on a contending team on a Tier 1 squad. So we'll see what that ends up being for him. And then, again, Skeen's another guy on this list that has had ample opportunity and is no longer really a young guy you can talk about, but now on this veteran-heavy SK lineup. Very curious to see how his personality fits in.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly going to be one of those ones where this seems to be the last or the second last type of bus stop, last stop on the subway type of situation. You got to find your way home if you are skiing. So I think this is certainly one of those ones where you have to find a little bit more traction, a little bit more success for him in this time around with this, again, experimental SK squad.
Another year of rankings, another year where, yes, Caps is, of course, sitting at the top of the mid lane table. It doesn't matter if this guy has a dip in the regular season, has a bad series in playoffs. You will ultimately be talking about him at the top of the list coming into this year. But I will say, Jojo Pyun was as good, maybe better than advertised coming over last year, especially in the second half of the year.
All I'll say is, yes, this is another year where you are getting Caps at the very top of the LEC mid lane rankings, and it is fantastic that we can talk about that type of consistency and longevity in his career. It needs to be more next year. If it's the same type of production, same type of quality, same results, that's not going to equal out to the same positioning for someone like Caps and his legacy. What we have seen and what we are capable of, this type of player, this quality that you were talking about, it needs to be more game breaking, more of a factor within these games and game changing for G2, whether that's domestic or international. And I think that is a fair type of task, type of quality to put towards someone that is hungry for a challenge like this in Caps and what he can do. Because again, nipping at his heels is going to be our boy, Mr. Jojo Pyun. Another year more solid, more stable within the LEC and Movistar Koi. And I think you're going to see a lot of that stability come through and the consistency that we have always asked and want to see even more out of Jojo Pyun. I think we're going to see higher levels of that this year.
It's an easy 1-2 for mid lane. If you're really high on Jojo, you might even put him ahead of Caps. We're not doing that yet, but things open up a little bit after that because Vladdy, there's question marks. Poby, they're changing spots as the starting mid laner for Fnatic, and feels like that's a side grade at most. Those guys are kind of evenly matched based off of last year. The hype from Jackies has kind of died down a little bit from the first year or two, and then you got Kiahu coming in for Carmine Corp. That whole group feels at a very similar level.
There's a lot of uncertainty, but for some reason, I feel positive about that type of group because I'm sure out of that grouping and out of these ones, you are going to find players that will step up, that are going to be interesting options, that are going to, earn your respect with their performance in the mid lane. But it is just, again, such uncertain ground, and on which one do you want to place your bet type of situation at this point. Kind of is the way that you feel about that mid lane territory, but it's important because right after that is your boy Humanoid, someone that has previously for the last 2, 3, 4 years occupied a position in that territory of this top, if not even further in that tier where Jojo Pyun and Caps find themselves at the very tippity top of our rankings. So to find himself down here certainly is a downward trend, but one of these ones where I don't think you can write off what he is possible and able to contribute if he's playing at his very best and is in form with his squad.
And you have to, despite having a down year, not seeing him for a little while, we haven't seen Nemesis in a tier 1 for a whole lot longer, and I know people have been hyped about him, calling for him to get an LEC starting spot for legit years now, since he left the LEC, and it feels like a fair placement to have them back-to-back with Humanoid getting the edge because he is still more proven on that main stage.
Right, and I think it's one of those ones where, again, this is a situation where it's going to be similar for a lot of these Lost Tones guy, where you can either take it as a disrespect or, whatever, but you can also view it as it's a challenge. You need to show out. You need to prove even more that this type of level, this type of focus, this type of preparation that goes into it, you're still going to be able to find a way to succeed. And for someone like Nemesis, I have the full expectations that he will prove himself type of one, but it absolutely has to be a cautious early power ranking for him.
Over to 80 carries now, and again, this is the easiest check it, ship it, lock it in number 1 spot for the boy wonder, the French phenom, Khalees, coming in after an incredible first year with Carmine Corp. Got a title, got a good international showing, even if maybe You could say he peaked earlier in the year and fell off a tiny bit at the second half of the year. Still no question. The firepower and potential is right at the very tippity top of LEC ADCs.
I'll argue that I'll take that over everything else that you could have listed as a potential possibility type of thing, because if that is the area where he faltered, where you need to make adjustments, need some lessons from his rookie year, that's where you're starting. Like there's so many other things that could have gone wrong or are problematic things that you'd want to improve on. If it's simply just trying to readjust on where you're peaking in your form, keeping that peak and lasting it in the focus and everything else like that, those are adjustments that you can make between the seasons type of things like that, and never mind the maturity and growth that happens for young players. All those things can happen. All the things that you needed to see to verify, to check mark that he is going to be this guy at the very top, the next king of the bot lane in the LEC, you saw all of it. And that is the fantastic news about Khalees, and why I'm so thrilled to have him at number one ahead of an established veteran that I think had quite a good rebound bounce back year in Hans Sama himself for G2.
Yeah, and we keep waiting to say Hans Sama's washed, G2 needs an AD carry, and then he puts together a fantastic split, one of the best of his career, and you're going, oh, okay, never mind, I guess it's fine. But the thing with, Hans Sama, you could even go right down to Supa on this list, and again, Hans is a little separate. He had more consistency last year, but the rest of these guys, we're talking Upset, Noah, Supa, there's moments where you go, wow, he's the guy. He can take over this game when he's given the resources, but there's also games where you're looking for them. Where are they? They're invisible. They're having no impact on the game.
And whether, again, it's one of those things where the talent is there. The raw skill is there to do it. But putting it together with the mental picture, the decision making, all sorts of things like that, that's where it becomes a little bit messier for this type of group, and a little less consistent for this type of group is really the problem when you're starting to look at them and starting to move down, I think, outside of talking about that top 3, top 2 type of tier that you have at the ADC position here.
And you can extend that same idea and talk about Crownie in that 7th spot, because there were a whole lot of LR comps that were built around him taking over hard carrying, especially if you paid attention to their scrims. How many times was it, okay, Crownie's 3-0, we'll just play through him and win the game. But sometimes the positioning was a little bit suspect out of your boy.
There still is some things that are, left to be desired when you're talking about his positioning, his overall play, I think, at the end of the day when you're talking about Crownie. But certainly someone that I am happy to see get another opportunity on that LEC main stage, and someone that, again, this is a little bit disrespectful, but it is that prove me situation of, okay, step back to this tier, and now that we've, again, let's see the improvements, let's see the changes, let's see the growth since the last time you were out here, and I think that we will be able to see that from Crownie if things are going right for Las Ratonas.
Unfortunately, a similar theme to the LCS for the final board here when you're talking about supports, and that is being a little bit weak, being a little bit, not as well-rounded as some of these other roles, and that's even with EU stealing the pride of NA and having Busio immediately dropped in ahead of Alvaro in the 1 spot.
And that's, again, how impactful this type of move, this signing was for not just Carmine Corp, but the LEC as a whole in the region, bringing over a talent of this type of level in Busio, who immediately supplants everybody else in the region on what he is already proven in his career, and what you hope to see out of him this year is an improvement and growth from him individually. So very excited that Busio finds himself there. That doesn't mean that Alvaro is any slouch or is a bad, support type of thing. You are still talking about the second best in the region, and still someone that is, when he is in perfect synergy with Elyoya in the jungle, is one of the most lethal supports out there as far as he is able to set up and get his team accelerated.
It's just, after Alvaro, you start to see a pretty substantial dip. And Labrov had some great moments with G2, but also some moments that left wanting in terms of maybe not having the right engages, not being confident enough to do those engages. And same with, guys like Jun and Mickey are Mickey was fine on Fnatic. I don't think anyone is saying he was the issues with them. Obviously, his communication is key, but it just feels like the ceiling gets a little bit lower, even though Jun's mechanics are fantastic.
Yeah, and I think when you are looking at that next tier, one of the things that I will mention about at least Mickey is that I am going to go on board for at least the initial part, the first stop of the train, right? That type of thing. I'll take the SK experiment that will go on, and especially because, again, most of it is really spearheaded by Mickey himself, and he was certainly one of the most motivated and focused contributing members of that Fnatic roster. So I think stepping, immediately outside of that one to a new project, and a project where he is the driving focus of a lot of these choices and what will be put around him, I have some faith in him giving us some of the best, that we have seen from him in his career, which is up towards that tier with Alvaro, with Busio at the very top end. Now, that is still going to be a question mark and an unproven thing, and I think things get a little bit even messier, even more unproven as you step outside of that top 5 in the support position.
And I will say to Mickey's credit, he's never really been the architect of a team. He's been on these G2 rosters and then Fnatic, where it wasn't really his say what the roster was going to be necessarily. And also you combine that with him playing with now a young AD carry and Yopa, and we've seen around the league, you get rejuvenated playing with some fresh blood that are extra hungry and motivated, who have never won a title or anything before.
We've seen it in plenty of other regions. We've seen it in traditional sports even as well. When you can have a role, a position that is interacting with another one of your teammates as intimately as you do as bot lane and support, yes, having that type of young veteran and, type of mentorship, type of mentality to it as well can be a factor. And I think that we'll hopefully can see some of those benefits for someone like Mickey. Because if we don't see those benefits for someone like Mickey and some upturn here and the numbers that go outside of 1 and 2 in this support position, it's going to be a rough time on the international stage. And I'll call it right away. It doesn't matter what the levels, the improvements that are made in top, mid, jungle, ADC. If your support is not able to contend with the support monsters that you're going to have to see in the...
Lastly, Reckless in that 8 spot. I'm ready to be proven wrong. All these Lost Ratones guys in the kind of 7-8 zone prove us wrong. I'd love to see all 5 of these guys starting in the LEC 4 split 2. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute stunners.